Thank you for joining us today for our first ever podcast. Really excited to recap a lot of our early history and roots in the humble beginnings of the Woerner family. And I'm here with my sister Angela and my father George.
Yeah, and we're hoping that through our podcast, we're going to be able to have some laughs, tell about some of our wins and losses, which I know Dad knows a lot about that, and bring in some experts, give you tips, go behind the scenes, just lots of ways to help you kick your neighbor's grass. But today we had to start somewhere, right, Alan?
That's correct. In order to become experts, we had a lot of lessons along the way. So let's go recap some history. We got Dad here. Dad, tell us a little bit about our early beginnings here, because I'm a 1984 model. A little bit later on in the generation, my father George, he's a 1957. So tell us a little bit about how did the Woerners get here? Why are we here, and how did we get here?
Yeah, that 1957 model was a pretty good model back when I was growing up. They had the 1957 Chevrolet.
Yeah, baby.
And man, everybody wanted one of them growing up. Everybody had one of them. So the 57 was a good year. Anyway, it really kind of all began with a young lady in New York City. Her name was Catherine Kleiber. She was an unwed mother that had to go back to Germany to help her parents. And while she was in Germany, her sister passed away. And after that, what happened was she met Mr. Woerner and married him, and they adopted Fred then as a Woerner, and they came back to the U.S. because they could see that World War I was about to begin. And there was a lot of concern that, the young men were fixing to get drafted in a war that they didn't want to be part of. So when they got back to the U.S., they ended up in New Jersey. Well, the family started growing, getting bigger and older, and Fred married a young lady named Emma Brum, and she was from Germany also. And there they began a family, and after a few children were born, Emma had asthma really bad. And so the doctor told her that she needed to go south and get in the humidity. So they ran across an ad in the paper, and it was Chicago Land Company, and said about going down south. And there was a German settlement in Alberta and Foley, which is in Baldwin County, Alabama. It's right on the Gulf of Mexico.
Really humid.
Mm-hmm.
Very humid, very hot.
Salt air.
And we've all been here for this many generations, and it's even hot and humid for us.
Mm-hmm.
So after that, they started by building a house over in Alberta, and after they got going and started planting some crops, they realized they were on some of the poorest land in Baldwin County, and Baldwin County has a lot of wonderful ag land. But anyway, they had 17 children.
Wow.
That's a lot.
And some extras, right?
And some extras.
Mm-hmm.
And Fred's brother, Gustav, was a missionary that went into China before the Red Army took over. And so they had 4 children, and they stayed home with Fred. And so now we're up to 21 children in the house. And so it was a lot of noise and a lot of farm hands is what it really amounted to.
Got to put some people to work, got mouths to feed here.
And your dad was one of the 17 then?
Yes, my father was number 10 of 17. Well, after that, my dad was drafted into the military, went overseas. He went into the Asian Pacific realm and as a Navy. And there he ended up in Saipan and Tinian, where the stories are about what happened when they went into Japan. So anyway, they got back, and my dad met a young lady, Lily Louise Lipscomb. And from there, he married her and brought her to Alberta, and they began and started a family. And I guess you guys all know from that point, there was 6 boys and 2 girls. So I grew up in a house full of, to be at that point, it was a lot of boys, but I was number 4. And so my dad was farming and he was in partners with one of his brothers. And Eddie would graduate from high school and said, "Hey, Dad, I want to farm." And so my brother Eddie was an inventor, and at some point Mike can tell some stories about all his incredible inventions.
Oh yeah.
And he was one of a kind. He is one of a kind when it comes to those innovative things. But in agriculture, we got to be creative and inventive and solve problems. And my brother Eddie loved doing that. So each one of the boys, as they got out of high school, decided to go directly into farming. One brother went to college for just a little while, come back, and he said he wanted to farm. And so I was number 4. I graduated in 1976. I wanted to farm. And I had met a young lady at school in the 6th grade, and I noticed she was very tall, and I was kind of a short runt, but I got square dance with her in one of this, and that was kind of when I realized that this is very interesting. So when we got into high school, I started dating my wife Janice, and when we graduated, we got married and began our life journey in agriculture.
Well, I know you touched base a little bit about your mom and dad and having all the 8 children. What would you say were the personalities of your mom and dad, what you felt like they passed down to you? Because I know Grandpa Eddie and Grandma Lily, they're like patriarchs of our Woerner family. And so just tell
Well,
us a
my
little bit.
dad growing up, you needless to say, in a family of 21, they had to work. And my dad, his gift was works. When he was not a man to tell you much about love and all that, but he expressed it with love, with work. Well, needless to say, my mother was just the opposite. She taught us how to love. So my dad taught us how to work, and my mother taught us how to love.
And now, so we got the whole family here, and it's time to go off into business together, farming. It sounds like. So then there's E.J. Woerner and Sons. Tell us about E.J. Woerner and Sons from quickly recapping the produce era to where we are today. How did we get here through that?
Well, it always starts with working and being hungry. And so when Eddie got out, my brother Eddie was the first one. He started us. He said, "Hey, there's 6 of us there, 6 boys and 2 girls." I said, we're going to have some space. We're going to have to do some things. So he got into produce. So we got into sweet potatoes and Irish potatoes, and that really began to expand and grow. And then later we got into the sweet corn business. Well, that was pretty exciting times, very difficult times. Wasn't making a whole lot of money. But in 1987 was one of those pivotal years that you never forget. You never know when you plant seed what the true harvest to be. And sometimes in life, it's not just about the crops we grow, but it's the seeds we plant of faith and love that really are the things that we never forget. They're treasures, and they help other people. So that was an interesting time, and we had quite a few of those experiences throughout our generation also.
And we pretty much almost went completely bust in the produce time period, correct? I mean, the rains came in. This is South Baldwin County. Weather's very unpredictable. Everybody's leveraged out planting produce, and then it starts raining. So tell us a little bit about how that
And there's no
transition-
government funds back then either to help.
Yeah, that
almost
was
lost the
rough.
farm right there on that particular
Yeah.
flooding event.
So in 1987, the year began out in April when my mother was going to Pensacola to work at one of the stores she opened up, and had a car accident, and she lost her life there that day. And that's kind of how the year began. And so during that time, we were in the middle of planting almost 3,000 acres of produce. So anyway, when the crop began to get ready, we on June the 1st, we was to start harvesting. We did, and this June 2nd, it started raining. Well, it rained for 30 days. And needless to say, in those days, there was no crop insurance. And we had local farmers, too, that were contributing and growing for us, too. So it wasn't just our family, but it was other community families that were growing this many acres of produce. And these were very difficult times. Well, needless to say, the truth be known, we had lost more money during that 2 months of harvest than we had ever made in 3 generations. If you took 3 generations, everything that accumulated, we had lost more in that 1-2 month period. So we all met and prayed, the family, the boys and dad and mom, and my mom, she called the prayer meeting. You know, she was the one with love, and she had incredible faith. And we prayed and told the Lord, look, yeah, we've lost all this, and there's a lot of families here, and there's a lot of people we owe, and we have a responsibility. So we spent the next 4 years paying everybody back. I'll never forget this point. At the very end, I was kind of working with a lot of the books and paying bills, and we had accumulated enough money to go pay the last 2 vendors. And so I got in my truck and went to Georgia, and it was 2 big companies, 2 box companies actually. And I had told them the day before, called them and said, I'm coming over. We want to pay everything up. And so when I got there, the first place, a young man come out about your age, Alan, and he was the next generation, kind of like what our farm is. There's a new generation coming. And he met me there, and he said, hey, I need you to come back here. I want you to meet some people. So when I went back there was the patriarch, the man that had been in this business for his entire lifetime. And then there was another generation there. And they all wanted, the patriarch and everybody wanted everybody to come see this event. And I didn't know it was so important, but when I handed them a check, they told me, you know what? All I can tell you is this. And of all of our years, we've never seen someone lose so much and pay them back. That's why I had my whole family here to see this. And then I told them the story of our faith and how we had, after we had prayed, my brother Larry had started a small billboard company. And that night when he went home, a man called him and said, I want to buy your billboard company.
Wow.
Yeah, it was incredible. So after 2 months of due diligence, he comes over and he gives us a check, and he's there with his accountant and his attorney. Now, you never tell someone where you're at in life and financially. You know, they say you never sweat, you know, if you're up against the wall.
Wow.
And so that's when we told him the story that we had prayed, and we were on a journey that we had to pay people back. And he said, he turned to his accountant and his lawyer. He said, did you hear what he just said? He said, I told you this morning. God told me to go buy that company. And it was the same day he called Larry and said he wanted to buy it, that they got both, you know, God brought 2 parties together. Right. Incredible. So when I told the people over in Georgia this story, it just began to take a life of its own. So they were extremely excited. So then I went to the other box company. Wow, same thing. Only this time they all come out to the front. You know, they heard I was there. So there's the patriarch. There's the next generation. Then a younger generation. And I handed them a check. And I told them a little bit about the story, how we had really lost it all. But I wanted to thank them for not foreclosing on it. I just wanted to thank them that they gave us a chance to pay him back. And he too said they had never seen somebody lose so much and still pay him. So these are the kind of stories in life that change us forever.
Yeah. Certainly a lot of humble beginnings, a lot of hard work, and even some tough love. And so thank you, Dad. Thank you, Angela, for joining us on our first ever podcast as we recapped a little bit about our family history. and we look forward to hosting even more podcasts in the future.